Welcome to another live episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 336. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, our usual cast of characters, Gail from Communities, Digital News, nyfights.com, um, and Daniel from the Inscriber and For Boxing News. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, here we are. You want a fight game recap? Say no more. Here we are.
Abs- absolutely. Boxing talk on a Tuesday. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, blog, or website, I should say, discussing all things the sweet science. The motto is when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, it will get talked about. If you want to find more information regarding the show, regarding all things Pound for Pound Box Report, the website is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.com. You could just navigate the page. The top portion of the page, you'll find links. Will follow the show on all podcast platforms, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anything and everything in between, where you can donate to the show. We also, with our social media links, got a uh, page on YouTube, but put an asterisk by it because I'm having some issues. Page on Facebook, but I should say put an asterisk by that because I'm having issues with Facebook vis-a-vis the page. But you can for sure check us out on Twitter, check us out on IG, check us out on Tumblr, check us out on YouTube. Also, you links to where you can donate. Got a Cash Me, PayPal, the donation link. Let donation be the best nation. Will really help whatever spare change that you can have. I know it's tough in these economic times, but you got a little spare change, $1, $2, whatever in between, $5. Please shoot some. If you would please shoot some coin, pound for pound box report, help overall production of the show behind the scenes. If you want to email us, you can do so at p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. Let me repeat that, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. All questions and comments are welcome. We will answer them. Also, leave a review on iTunes and Spotify, or Apple Podcast and Spotify. 5-star review will get read on the show. Last but certainly not least, I know we're heading to the end of the summer, but it's never too late to get the body right, the physical body right, as well as the mental health, overall health and wellness. I am an online coach for beachbody.com. Take advantage of the 2-week free trial on Beachbody On Demand. You can find that link on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. What that is you get free access to any and all programs on Beachbody On Demand. If you're looking for a boxing-based program, check out 10 Rounds. It's a 6-week program. 3 days of work of boxing-based cardio, 2 days of work of weightlifting, or if you're looking to check out any of the other programs on Beachbody On Demand, be it the new program 645, which is getting ready to drop to the public at large later on this summer, 6 weeks of the work, which is, I will argue, the most challenging, the Insanity series, the old school P90X series, Morning Meltdown for those who like to get their work in the morning, Pacquiao, which the ladies seem to like. Whatever your fitness, health, and wellness goals, Beachbody On Demand, they have it. So please check out my coaching page and all things Beachbody on Pound for Pound Boxing Report page. Let's get things started. We know the main fight that took place this weekend. Let's not beat around the bush. Go to Las Vegas, T-Mobile Arena to be specific. Manny Pacquiao making his return to the ring. He's fighting Yordenis Ugas, WBA welterweight champion. We talked about this fight last week, Gail. We came to the conclusion that if Pacquiao was anywhere close to the form that he showed in his last fight against Keith Thurman, 2019, I believe it was, he would win. Well, for Pacquiao fans, right? And I see Daniel's left us. You hopefully get him rejoin us. Excuse me. But unfortunately for Pacquiao fans, the fighter that we saw against Thurman, we did not see against Ugas. Um, Manny threw a lot of punches, but he wasn't connecting. Ugas, to his credit, he controlled the pace of the bout early and kept controlling the pace throughout the fight. The jab was excellent. He did a lot of subtle foot movement, and the right hand in particular, overhand right. It was like it was a radar, a bullseye on Manny Pacquiao's face. He kept hitting him with that punch all night long. Pacquiao couldn't get out of the way of that shot. Uh, Punches and bunches, yes, but he was off rhythm all night long, while Ugas fought one of the best fights of his career, in my opinion. Uh, I was unsure about the judging. Fortunately, the judges were right in terms of their scorecard. It scored a unanimous decision for Ugas across the board. Were you surprised at how the fight went, Gail?
Given Pacquiao's performance and, after we saw first couple of rounds, no. The big question mark, of course, for everybody was after 2 years out of the ring and being damn near close to 43 years old, what was he going to look like? And he looked like the guy who'd been out of the ring 2 years, then 43 years old, nearly. It was still Manny Pacquiao. It's like looking at a bright piece of cloth or painting that's faded. The picture's still there, but it wasn't what it was. And that's when Father Time has his way with all of us. That's what happens. And for Pacquiao, the number one issue was his footwork. His feet looked like he had on cement overshoes. It really did. He just couldn't move. The lower half of his body seemed like it was underwater. And he did say after the fight, his legs were cramping up. He couldn't move. Well, no kidding. Maybe those runs every day up the hill to Griffith Park in LA was overdoing it. And he did talk about that too. Did he train too hard? Did he overtrain? You're a coach, Michael. You get to a certain age and recovery is so important. I don't care how good you feel. The body needs more time in between workouts to recuperate properly. And he didn't get it. All I kept thinking through the fight was, oh my God, thank God that isn't Errol Spence standing across from him, because Errol Spence would have flattened this version of Pacquiao. Now, taking nothing away from Ugas, he boxed a super smart fight. He did what he's good at. The right hand could not miss. The jab was perfection. For purists, really a fine performance. And it wasn't a boring fight. It was not a boring fight. So thank you, Yordenis Ugas, for completely resurrecting the reputation of the Cuban style after Guillermo Rigondeaux stunk out the war grounds last weekend, which is just the worst. So if Pacquiao had to go out, he didn't get blown out. He put up a fine effort. He fought all the way through. It was not a blowout, despite the fact that I had it scored 117, 111 for Ugas. Two of the judges had it 116, 112, and one of the cards was 115, 113. Boy, that one's close. That's a card where you give every swing round to Pacquiao. But 116, 112, I think that was absolutely solid and a generous scorecard. And let's hope that's Pacquiao's last fight. I'm sure we're going to talk about that next.
We certainly will. And Daniel, he'll be back on with us shortly. Before we get to that, excuse me, I'm going to read a couple comments here from Lee Groves in the chat. Shout out to Lee Groves. Thank you for joining us live. He says in reaction to the fight, he says his fist, meaning Manny, his fists were still fast, and he threw twice as many punches as Ugas did, but he was inaccurate. And in addition to his heavy legs, he also lacked head movement, allowing Ugas to land with power shots. He also mentioned that he agreed with Ugas in terms of the scores, 117 111.
Thank you, Lee.
I um, understand the argument about legs. I put a slight pause on that because if that was the case, I would ask Freddie Roach what was he doing, him and Boo Boy doing in preparation. Given the age, given the layoff, they know their fighter more than anybody, right? If he had dead legs during the fight, to me that says he may have had issues with his legs during training, right?
Well,
Why didn't they pull off in terms of preparation? Why didn't they make the proper adjustments so they can so Pacquiao could get some life back in his legs uh, uh, before the fight,
well,
before he stepped into the ring?
possible they weren't seeing it in the gym. It's possible in sparring sessions, in short bursts, they just weren't seeing it. And it's a hell of a lot different when somebody's punching back at you that way, especially because Ugas was using very specific weapons. And to his credit, Ugas was defensively responsible. When he forgot his own head movement, Pacquiao could get to him. But when he remembered to, move his head after he threw and reposition, boy, he could not be caught. He just didn't. Pacquiao wanted to fight inside, dangerous, but really, that's about the only tactic he had available to him. Ugas was just not going to have it. He didn't need to let it happen. He could have fought, a foot away from Pacquiao all night long. So credit to him. His losses have, for the most part, been very close. A lot of people thought he beat Sean Porter. I think that fight taught him a lot about how you do have to approach a bigger name. What a golden opportunity. Good for him. He took the fight on short notice. He gave himself a shot, and by God, it paid off for him. I'll be very interested to see what he decides to do next.
I see Daniel. Let's join us. Let's get him into the discussion. I was mentioning that there was we felt prior to the fight that if Pacquiao was anywhere close to the form that he showed against Thurman, he would win. There was a consensus among many pundits and media members that Pacquiao was going to win this fight, and yet we saw what we saw on the night. Were you surprised at how the fight, at how things developed and went in Vegas?
Yes, because I have to eat a gigantic plate of crow. I actually predicted the score of 120 to 107 for Manny because I figured his speed would be there, his punching combination would be there. His hands were there. Unfortunately, the problem is everything else, it wasn't the old Manny, it was an old Manny. So the power that he needed, that he always gets primarily in his legs, that he needs to launch those punches, unfortunately, they weren't there. It wasn't enough. And as much as he tried to get inside, Ugas, to his credit, was able to maintain the jab, keep him in a distance, and kept peppering him with those shots. And nothing was wrong, unfortunately, with the scorecards. And Father Time is undefeated, unfortunately. It's undefeated. It'll catch up to anybody. And it looked like in that night it caught up to Manny. And both physically and probably mentally.
Simple question in the aftermath in terms of Manny. Um, and I'll use the title of the show, title of this particular episode, to ask the question: have we seen the last of the Pac-Man? Right? Is it time for him to call it a day? Um, he's look, he's a Hall of Famer. Whatever he decides to do, if he decides to come out with a press conference later this week, next month, whatever, and decide it's over, he's first ballot instant Hall of Famer. Hell, I would argue they should make an exception to put him to not wait the 4 or 5 year window. Just put him in there now if he wants. The day after he retires, he's been that prolific in his career. Is he done?
Physically, yes.
Yeah, there are two answers. Is he done? Is his boxing career past him realistically from a skills perspective? Yes, it is. Is he done? Is he the man done with boxing? Well, I don't think he has to decide right away. He did say after the fight that he's got 1 month to decide whether he wants to run for president of the Philippines, which is why he's really hung on so long in boxing. He needed to be 42 years old to run. He turned 42 last December. So that put him into this current election cycle. He has some difficulties back in the Philippines. He has for many years been allied with the current president Duterte, but they've had a falling out. The president can't run again, but there is some chatter he will run for vice president, which is a separate office in the Philippines. That could cause some roadblocks for Manny. So I think what will happen is he will play out his political hand at the table, see how it goes. If he becomes president, he's done. Because, come on, do we really think the Philippines version of the Secret Service is going to let a President Manny Pacquiao box in the ring? Oh, hell no, that's not happening. So if he becomes president, he's done. If he doesn't and he loses, mark my words, here on Tuesday, August 24th, 2021, if he does not become president, we are going to see him in the ring again. I'm not real thrilled about that. I think I would, of course, hindsight being 2020, he really should have hung it up after Thurman, after a tremendous, surprising performance. That should have, but there are very few men in boxing, mostly men, who know when it's time to retire. Andre Ward did it. Vitaly Klitschko did it. There have been others who walked away at the right time. Now, I fear that Pacquiao might not be one of them.
To that point, Lee says that like Ali before Holmes, Manny had an aura that convinced people that he could come back against a prime foe after 2 years away. While Ugas didn't win as convincingly as Holmes, he fought perfectly. I'll go to you, Daniel. You want to pick up after what Gail said?
Yeah, like that little news about Duterte running for vice president actually got confirmed today. He let the ruling party know that he is going to be running for the vice presidency. And unfortunately, given the machinations of Philippine politics from what's seen, it looks like he's doing it to make sure that there's a clear path for the Marcos dictatorship, the Marcos family, to come back to full power, with him being their loyal lapdog. Which, unfortunately, to answer one of the questions Gales has, is on the skill set, yes. On skills, Manny's done. If this is the Manny that we're showing up, because if his legs aren't there, if that Manny would have shown up, if Errol Spence would have been okay to fight, Spence would have knocked him out within 3 rounds. If he would have fought Bud and that was the Manny that showed up, Bud would have knocked him out within 3 rounds. And the skill set, that's at that point. But we all know also that he technically does have 1 fight left in that PBC contract. And unfortunately, we all know the fight that if he wants to leave, like for the final fight, we all know the fight that he wants. And it's unfortunately the fight we all dread. But it may be the only fight that could be the one of least punishment when it comes to Manny, at least physically. But Yeah, he did say he was going to have a month to decide. I think Duterte and Marcos already decided for him at that point. So, more than likely, yes, we're going to see Manny again, but it'll likely be it'll likely try to be as a special attraction. I think his days and championship fights are done.
Triller is going to be calling.
I don't want to. You're right, Gail. He should have bid adieu after the win against Thurman 2 years ago. Perfect timing for it. It would have been perfect timing. Leaving out on top, beating a elite top guy in the division. Um, when people were talking, and just a feather, just a feather in the cap. Now, the fear is to Daniel's comments in terms of um, the politics of the Philippines physically done, but because of circumstances outside of his control, we may see him in the ring again. And if he decides to return, I'm feeling queasy about it as I speak because Ugas pretty much had his way against him, even though it was close and competitive. To your point, Gail, if that was Spence, oh dear. If that was Bud, oh dear. Hell, if that was a rematch against Thurman, oh dear. Never mind the young guns that's coming up like Ortiz and Boots. So no, it is my hope that Pacquiao calls it a day. He's had an outstanding career. He's an ATG fighter. Unfortunately, it will be some time before we get that decision from him on what he does. Let's move on to another fight on this card that I want to focus on, and that's undefeated guy, undefeated Filipino featherweight by the name of Magsayo, fought former junior featherweight champion Ceja Daniel, and I didn't talk about this fight because I was unsure of who would win, honestly, and Pacquiao Ugas got all of the attention, took all the air out of the room. But for those who are watching the fight live on pay-per-view, right? In terms of action, this provided just as much and more, if not more action than the main event. Magsayo put down Ceja early in the first round, but Ceja, to his credit, he's tough as an oak. He got up, he brought the fight to Magsayo, made Magsayo really, really work until round 8 when one shot boom, basically, Halash's right hand put Ceja down and out. This one snuck up on me. A terrific fight.
It was a really, really good fight. Like I said, Magsayo is, like I said, he's trying to line up to be, unfortunately, the latest in the long line of Filipino fighters to succeed Manny. And like I said, you had the sentiments there. He's young. He's at the weight class where Manny probably had probably his most in the air that he has his best successes as a knockout artist. And you have Freddie Roach in the corner. You have Samodio in the corner. So everything's set up there. And Junior Ceja was the right opponent for him. Somebody that you caught him with a flash knockdown, but he's just going to get up. And for the majority of the fight, he was grinding Magsayo until he landed that right hand. Now, it's not exactly a Deontay Wilder situation where where a competent fighter can outbox him and then Wilder lands his right hand and everything changes. It's not that drastic with Magsayo, but there are some areas, particularly fighting on the inside, that need to be worked on. Because Ceja lived on the inside after that flash knockdown. Now, the main thing that it showed is actually that it's good quality. It's a good quality fight. It's in a good division, and we know, like to say, there's some machinations that's going to start happening soon as far as who's going to fight at that division. So Magsayo He did himself a good favor in kind of not. And Ceja, even with the knockout, as bad as it was, because he didn't get up for a bit, as bad as it was, he will likely have earned himself at least another slot on the pay-per-view card.
I go to you, Gail. I think this win puts him in position, I think, to fight Gary Russell. Um, should his camp try to move towards that fight? I know he won, but I'm thinking, okay, he got this exciting win again here. But as much as a lot of fans are frustrated by Gary Russell and his insistence on fighting once a year, yeah, keep this guy away from him, Russell. Give him a couple more fights to get some seasoning, to get some experience.
Yeah, I think so. I'll tell you what I would love to see. Gary Russell aside, don't think he'd participate given that, he wants that one fight a year. I would absolutely love to see a World Boxing Super Series talent in the featherweight division. You got a lot of very even guys there bubbling just under elite. Why not let them have at each other? Magsayo, Kid Galahad, Mauricio Lara, assuming he wins his rematch, Navarrete. You got a lot of names there you could throw in, and we'd have a hell of a fun tournament. Um, most of them have a loss or two. What the heck? Go for it. In fact, Magsayo, I think, is the
Man,
only
look,
guy without.
Maxayo Navarrete, excuse me for interrupting. I don't know if it could be made. Aram and PBC. Oh, I don't know Maxayo's representation. I think he's with PBC. But yeah, Maxayo Navarrete on paper, that'd be a really entertaining scrap.
You make those two guys the top seeds, right? And you let the divisions, both halves play out with all the rest of these guys. Oh, hell yeah. There's a lot of fun to be had. I think you've got plenty of talent who would participate and be good for everybody. And, the winner of the Super Series gets the next annual fight with Mr. Gary Russell.
Yeah. So, really, really good win. Where he goes from here, who knows? But to your point, Gail, at the very least, he caught the attention of the fans, right? Of the viewing public. That's the most important thing, because if the public catches wind of you and you get a buzz, you trend somewhat on boxing Twitter, you earn yourself a fight or two back on a major platform, and that's more important right now for him than anything else. I will steer him away from Russell, but get him some rest and give him back on a spotlight platform as soon as possible. Let's move on to women's boxing here. Card in California took place last week on Friday. I didn't mention it on the show last week. I wrote about this card for Three Kings Boxing. Please go to threekingsboxing.com, your latest source for boxing information. Headlined by Callie Reis, right? Who defended her title by the name, defended her belt, excuse me, against a woman by the name of Prazak, by Diana Prazak. First defense for Callie Reis, WBC 140-pound version, right, Gail? And I know Prazak was 42, and she was the underdog, a former champion herself, right? But Reis got the win. But am I wrong in thinking this is a fight that could have went either way? It went by split decision. I was writing and covering the fight, and I'm thinking, if they gave this fight to Prazak, I couldn't be mad. She came forward all the way, all fight long, threw punches and punches all fight long. And in the championship rounds, the last third of the fight, she had Reis reeling, not in the physical sense that she was hurt, but she had her distressed and unbothered. When the final bell rung, Reis had a look on her face that I'm glad this is over, and I'm really surprised that this fight was this this tough. It was tougher than she expected. Uh, your thoughts on who on this fight and who did you have winning?
I did have Reese winning. I don't know if it was our expectations for Reese that colored the way we saw it, but I think Reese did more than enough to win. When you're going to have to go up against the champion, you really do have to take the belt away from the champion. It's not quite tie goes to the runner, but she did enough to defend. But yeah, props to Prazak. She's a Australian who's relocated to LA, trains in LA, which gives her a lot more opportunities to fight. This is a smart fight for her to take. She stood in there tough. She really made Reese fight, made her engage, and that made for a good fight for us, the fans. Of course, like always, I watch women's fights when you have quality fighters like these women are, thinking, God, could we please have 3-minute rounds? I think we would have seen a very different fight. When one fighter is gaining momentum in that 2 minutes and boom, it's done, it kind of catches them up short. And the fight might have gone very differently had that happened. So Reese prevailed. Prazak, even given her age, because there is a lack of quality fights for women, she'll still get a lot of fights at junior welterweight. And as long as she feels capable, funny that we're talking about a 42-year-old woman junior welterweight when we were just talking about the 42-year-old Manny Pacquiao who's too old. But the women don't fight as often. They just don't have as much competition. So, they don't have as much tread rolled off the tires. I'm sure she can perform several more fights in her career. She's only as a pro 14-4, but had 9 knockouts out of that 14. That's a pretty high knockout percentage for women's fighters. So, love to see her again.
I don't know if you saw this card, Daniel, but the co-main event had a WBA women's welterweight world title eliminator between Alma Ibarra and Kandi Wyatt. And I have to say, how can I put this? Ibarra won by 8th round decision. She dominated Wyatt from the beginning. Ibarra, who lost to Raquel Miller in 2019 in a world title bid, she lost the WBA interim 154-pound title to Miller. She's dropped down to 147. She's dropped down to welterweight. After the fight, it put her in line to fight undisputed welterweight women's champion Jessica McCaskill. And after watching Ibarra perform against Wyatt, Rick Ramos, I know you supposedly been talking mess about Ibarra on social media. Ibarra addressed you directly after the fight. We will see, Daniel, if he decides to put his fighter McCaskill in there against Ibarra, because based on what I saw from Ibarra, she would give McCaskill a really, really good fight. I would not be one bit surprised if she would beat McCaskill. She performed that well. And if you know anything about her backstory, and I penned a personal piece on 3 Kings Boxing. You can check it out on 3kingboxing.com in terms of what she's been through in the past year, particularly in 2020. Not only is she talented, she's hungry as hell. Again, Ramos, the ball is in your court. Let's see if you all that mess that you talked about her. Let's see you put your fighter in there with her, Daniel.
I missed the actual fight when it happened. I saw the highlights, and yeah, Ibarra did what she needed to do, and the smack talk afterwards between her going after Ramos, between Sinisa challenging Marlon to a parking lot fight. It's getting good in women's boxing when it comes into the trash talk. And that's going to be very, very interesting to see what they're going to do in putting her against McCaskill, who, like I said, obviously is coming off like the best stretch of her career. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. I would probably right now still give the edge to McCaskill, but you cannot say that the popcorn will not be ready.
I'll go to you, Gail, and as I go to you, your comments on the fight. I'm gonna look it up right quick and mention what she said, word for word. Again, I wrote a personal. I did the recap for the fight, and I did a personal piece on Alma Ibarra for ThreeKingsBoxing.com. Here's the backstory. Apparently, Rick Ramos again been talking mess about her. And Obara, when interviewed after the fight, after the win, she said this quote: "More than sending a message to Jessica McCaskill, it's more a message to Rick Ramos. You said I was shit. You said I couldn't fight. I showed you tonight that I can fight. I'll see you in the ring." Yeah. Again, she wants McCaskill in that ring, and she's highly motivated.
Great. I think that's great. Why not? Give her a shot. She wants it. I think it's a tough test for her, but I do think she'll make the most of it. Let's see where her skills lead her. I don't think she's got enough to beat her, but I absolutely applaud and approve somebody ambitious enough to try, match your skills against the champion. And hey, if there's a little bad blood, a little trash talk, I'm all for that too. All in good fun.
And I'm teasing about her backstory, right? Here's the her son. Her son has a blood condition where the blood doesn't clot properly in his system. He was in March of 2020 while she was getting ready, while she was in the Mexico Olympic box off for the Mexico Olympic box off. Her son was in a minor accident, had to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. So she had that in the back of her mind while competing to get on the Mexican Olympic team. During that same time, during that same tournament, she was kidnapped, and she was kidnapped for ransom. During the time of that kidnap, she was kidnapped for over 20 hours. She was beat up. She was physically abused. Had the heart of a warrior. They offered her food, offered her pizza. She says, "I can't eat that. I'm a fighter." And that made it worse for her. Unfortunately, she was eventually found, and again, the fighter spirit. After she went through that ordeal, she tried to get back into the tournament. Unfortunately, the officials disqualified her. And so, yeah, that period in 2020, being kidnapped, the issues with her, the disorder that her son has. Yeah, she says 2020 was hell. But yeah, I'm not sure I would make McCaskill the favorite, because McCaskill has been 140, 147 pounder most of her career, right? Ibarra has been fighting bigger, 54, even 60. She beat Cornejo at 60, right? In her previous fight. She's naturally bigger. I think she's naturally stronger. And I think her overall skill set and her boxing skills is better than McCaskill. McCaskill is come forward and physical and whatnot. But I don't know if she will be able to push her around the ring in the same way she pushed Cecilia Brackets around the ring twice. And I don't think she can hurt her. And if Ibarra gets that jab going, and with McCaskill, who likes to lean forward, that opens her up for the uppercut, which Ibarra went to town with on Kandi Wyatt. Again, and I'll say it right here, pound for pound box report here, Monday, August 24th. I want to see if Ramos, if his actions back up his talk, because if he puts her in the ring with her, Again, yeah. She's going to give McCaskill a tremendous fight. Now, keep saying it. I'm not sure if McCaskill will win, and I'm calling for that fight. That's the fight I want to see. The backdrop, styles make fights. There's obvious beef there. I want to see that fight. I want to see it. And before we go on to the news segment, a couple of comments here. One from Chris Andre Boxing, in terms of our discussion about Magsayo. He says that I don't think Magsayo is as big as a puncher at Wilder pound for pound, though. Can he rely on it? Can he rely on it in the same way Wilder does to get out of trouble consistently? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. He has a lot to learn. I would tend to agree with your overall assessment of that. Chris, he's not big as a puncher as Wilder, and no, particularly against Gary Russell, he can't rely on that to get out of trouble. Gary Russell, again, despite what you may think about him and his insistence on fighting once a year, he's a damn good fighter and a damn good boxer. He got speed all over the speed like nobody's business. Fastest hands in the sport, arguably. Lee says also, get this comment up. Interesting. The 2021 Olympic fights for women had 3-minute rounds, and nothing untoward happened. So why not extend that to the pros? Gail, this is a subject you've been harping on for the longest. Respond to Lee's question, please.
Yeah, no, Lee and I are like-minded in this. The Olympics prove the women can and should fight 3-minute rounds. And for several of the commissions, if the fighters agree, the major commissions permit 3-minute rounds. Nevada permits it. California permits it. New Jersey permits it. I can't run down the whole list, but truly most of the major state commissions do permit 3-minute rounds. Everybody involved, promoters, the women, the commission, the sanctioning bodies need to get on board and support it. Part of the reason the fight between Seniesa Estrada and Marlon Esparza was so good several years ago here in California and was such a blistering, exciting fight. 3-minute rounds, y'all. 3-minute rounds. Men who say women's boxing is boring are looking at these shortened up rounds without that extra capacity to wear your opponent out and score a knockdown or a knockout. That's a lot of the reason, in addition to just physical conformation. Women are never going to carry the kind of muscle mass men do. That's biology at work, y'all. But they would score more knockdowns. And someday, somebody smarter than me, who can analyze all the data that's out there, will look at the comparable men's knockout ratio if in key fights their rounds were 2 minutes. In other words, how many men scored knockdown wins in under 2 minutes versus that third minute. And I bet you anything, their knockout ratio would go down probably much closer in proportion to the women if we're talking 2 minutes versus 2 minutes. Come on, somebody out there who's a data nerd, get on that. I'd love to know.
Let's put it bluntly. Do you think there's an underpinning of sexism here in terms of why you don't see women's 3-minute rounds for women?
Can I give you a one-word answer?
Yes.
Duh! Yeah. And I understand, and, disagree as I might, I will not disrespect the feeling that many fans have, both men and women. They do not like to see women hitting each other. They don't. They don't like to see the punching, the rawness of it. Interesting to me that many of those same fans do like to see mixed martial arts among women, and women's fortunes in MMA have been much better, and there is more opportunity there. I'd like to see women's boxing look to, are there some things we can borrow, or the other things we can do to make our end of the sport, a little more broadly acceptable. But it just simply may be the march of time and the march of generations and the way people look at the sport. Until then, there are opportunities. Hardworking women can do it, can make it happen, can give their best. And I thank the Olympics for all the corruption and all the crazy stuff that happens with combat sports in the Olympics. They did open the doors to women. They did give a platform. They have increased the number of divisions. And women winning gold medals gives them a platform they didn't have before. Clarissa Shields, she is the poster woman for how that works. And we had several terrific women's fighters in the Olympics that we're all going to want to see.
Let's thank you, Lee, for the question. Because it's a topic that needed to be addressed here. We've talked about it before, and then I have no problem picking up on it again. Let's move on to some news here, and kind of news that took place outside of the ring involving Gervonta Tank Davis. I'll give it to you. I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. Is that he was a scary situation that took place over the weekend, in which the plane that he was in, accident happened. It crashed trying to get off the run. Not crash. Yeah, kind of crashed getting off the runway. All parties were okay. Tank was okay and whatnot. So was his folks. But you're thankful that he's okay. As troublesome situations, troublesome development here regarding Tank, not directly in terms of what he's done, but he escaped danger.
Yeah, that was a real scary situation when you look at it, because not only he lost his family, his kids were involved in that crash, and it just almost like coincided like the same day the WBA kind of gave him an ultimatum, because he has either some type of trinket in at least 2 or 3 weight divisions, and they gave him an ultimatum. He had to pick a division, and it's almost weird that right around his saying into this happens. But obviously, we're all glad the Tank's okay. Like I said, hopefully everything recovers. His family doesn't get too traumatized by the situation, because situations like that can get traumatizing. And as long as he's good, everything's good. Okay. Now, the big decision probably after that is what division he needs to stay at in order to keep whatever trinket he needs to keep with the WBA. Lightweight seems to be like the optimal one, but I will not be surprised if he tries to do 140.
135, 140. I agree with. I would say 135. They're still look. They got that quote unquote quartet there. Him, Lopez, Garcia, Haney. It would not be. It would be so wrong if there were not a match amongst those 4. Right. That's business that has to be settled. It has to be settled. Too much talent, too much potential for big money to be made among each of those men. And it would be a real shame if we didn't see a matchup with Tank against Ryan Garcia, Tank against Haney, Tank against Teofimo Lopez. That's the weight. 140 is decent, but I tend to agree. I agree with you, Daniel. 135 is the ticket for him. I'll go one more news development. Artur Beterbiev, right? BC IBF champion at 175 pounds. Been a minute since we seen him in the ring. When news broke this week, or over the weekend, I should say, that WBC has ordered him to fight Marcus Browne, who I believe was a former interim champ. Browne, 2 fights back, was defeated by John Pascal. Fight was stopped due to a bad cut. Your thoughts on what the WBC has decided to do vis-a-vis Beterbiev?
I'm not that thrilled with this fight. I'll give Marcus Browne a modicum of respect. He's had a lot of misbehavior outside the ring that I'm not real happy about. He isn't the first fighter to fall in that category. it falls in the better than nothing category for me. You're just so many more tasty opponents for Beterbiev. Whether they want a piece of him or not, who knows? Where the hell's Joe Smith? And of course, the fight. Frankly, as many people as want to see Canelo and Beterbiev, I want to see Beterbiev and Bivol, because I think that is a styles makes fights 50-50 that would be very interesting. But
you and I both know that they're holding. Let me take that back. I don't want to be conspiracy theorist, but one, Bivol is probably going to fight Buatsi first.
Yeah, I think so.
Two, all that determined in terms of 175. Let's face it, everything is on the cut, on the queue, in the back burner until Canelo and Caleb Plant.
Yeah, and it's not that far away, so let them do their business, and then everybody gets in line because everybody's interested in playing the Canelo lottery.
Well, another bit of news, Daniel. You just mentioned the private chat. I think it was the BO has ordered McGill versus Deverenchenko.
No, the BC. Suleiman was
BC. Okay, you're right. I've said BO. I meant BC.
Yes. Well, like I said, you wouldn't be wrong considering. Like I said, he is number one ranked in the WBO. But this is going to be weird to see what they're going to do as far as Golden Boy and Zanfer, because like I said, they've been planning this fight with him and Gabe Rosado after Rosado scored that knockdown. That knockout, which is still a probably contender for knockout of the year. And you go from that into a situation where, okay, you fight Dermachenko, you could probably beat Dermachenko, and next in line, and then you're in line to fight Jamal. Now the ball is really going to be among Munguia's court because he can command the audience with Andrade. He can command then the audience with Charlo, and if everything that we hear is right, there's nothing stopping Jamal Charlo from going to the zone. So it's an interesting thing that's going to happen, whether they get some permission, depending upon what they're going to do with the Gabe Rosado situation. We don't know, because how many times have we seen fights or mandatory fights be declared and then not be fulfilled?
One last bit of news here, Gail. David Benavidez, former two-time WBC champion at 168 pounds, was originally set to fight Uzcategui, former IBF champion. That fight was going to actually happen this weekend, but the fight was pushed back due to Benavidez testing positive for COVID-19. Well, news has come down today that the fight has been rescheduled for November 13th. Going to happen in Benavidez's hometown of Phoenix. Going to be aired on Showtime. Quick word on that, please.
Glad to see they've regrouped. This wouldn't be the first matchup that got delayed by COVID. COVID still gets to say the pandemic is still a player in boxing. I don't hate it. It's a good homecoming fight for Benavidez. It's a, stay busy, tune up, stay warm, test yourself fight. I don't think Uzcategui will provide a tremendous challenge, but he's plenty competent. He works hard. Give the fans some fun in Phoenix. It's smart for his minders to get him in front of a hometown audience and build that fight scene there. And he's, Benavidez is the guy to do it. And there are plenty of other fighters who could attract that same sort of home audience in Arizona. Oscar Valdez is another one. And the fans there do show up. That's a big, big metropolitan area anymore, and not so far from Mexico that fans won't come to see fights there as well.
Let's go to preview some fights here. One fight I want to focus on going to happen this Sunday in Cleveland, Ohio, on Showtime pay-per-view. On GP, I refuse to talk about the main event. of that pay-per-view card because again I got standards. So I'm going to focus on the undercard here. Going back to you on this one, Gail. Look, Amanda Serrano, unified WBC BO champion at 126 pounds. No doubt one of the best fighters, women's fighters in the world. If you want to throw in men's and women's fighters, she's just one of the best fighters, period. Best boxers, period, regardless of gender. But the main complaint about her from a lot of folk, from a lot of her critics, is that she's been a bit of a weight bully. She's won titles from 140, from 115 to 140. She's stepping into the ring against current 122-pound champion Yamelith Mercado, and I have to be honest here. I've seen Mercado fights. We've all seen Serrano display her talents in the ring, and I think there's no comparison. I'm not going to call her a weight bully here, but I think Serrano significantly better than Mercado. If she does not win this fight, she's older, she's naturally bigger, she's more skilled, and she has more power. If she doesn't win this fight, this would be one of the upsets of the year. Again, I'm not going to call her a weight bully, but she's the significant favorite here. Mercado, even though she's world champion, she's not Bob Hope cousin, no hope territory, but it borders on that against the likes of Serrano.
Yeah, I mean, thank God, and she's not Miranda Adkins either. So there is that. Um, I'm not sure we'd be calling a man a weight bully who boxed around. If you got the ability to do it and your skills are intact,
I would.
well,
I would.
you probably would. I don't see it that way. You know what? If you could do it, by all means. Is it good for your health? Well, that's between you and your trainer and your nutritionist and the people that look after you. You do need to have some candid conversations about that. And weight's a sort of perilous issue for women in today's society overall. I've always been impressed by women's professional fighters in all genres. They got to step on a scale for all the world to see, and they do it without blinking. Good for them. Hey, if Serrano can do it, more power to her. She is absolutely one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting, women's fighter on the planet right now. 3-minute rounds be damned. She finds a way to get it done in 2.
Yeah. Speaking of that rounds issue, shout out to Lee again. This is boxing geekdom on high level here. He says, "You want a boxing nerd? You got one." In response to Gail's query, I looked at George Foreman's record. He had 68 KOs, but if you took away the third minute, he had 28 KOs, cutting his KO ratio from 84% to a little over to 34.5%. So yeah, that's high level nerddom there, Lee. I salute that.
You are my statistical hero. That is so interesting and so telling. I mean, nobody has ever doubted George Foreman's power or ability to score a knockout, but you do need time in the ring, a stretch of time to set up your opponent, unless you just catch him cold, and it just doesn't happen as often as people think it does. So, we need to put the word out about this kind of reality to point out, where the difference is coming from. It's not that women can't build muscle or women don't have technique. It's that the knockout ratio is going to go up if you have more time to set up your knockouts in the ring and not give your opponent a rest more often than the men get. It's time on the clock and simple math.
Indeed. I go back to you, Daniel, before we shut things down. A quick word on Amanda Serrano, her title defense against Mercado. Are you there, Daniel? You on mute, Daniel, if you're talking. So I think Daniel stepped away. Um, he may come back, but let's start to shut the show down from here because I promise we'll get the show within an hour. We're right at the 60-minute mark right now. Um, so yeah, I'll first of all, if you like what you heard this evening, um, please hit that like if you listen to us live on YouTube, please hit that like button. Please hit that click that subscribe button as well. If you're checking out the show on the podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere and everywhere else in between. Please make sure to follow us there. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. 5-star review will get read on the show. I want to thank Lee. Very insightful comments he had in the chat. I want to thank Chris Andre Boxing, Sean Fitzgerald as well. Appreciate you listening live. Appreciate your comments. I will give Daniel's information because I think he's away for the moment. If you want to follow him, talking boxing, talking professional wrestling, talking to NBA specifically when it comes to Miami Heat. You can check out his stuff on 4Boxing News. You can check out his podcast, 4Boxing News, with Joe and Francis from 4Boxing. That show is on. You can check it out on. It's on the podcast realm as well. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. It's on Google Podcast. Just look up the show 4Boxing, the number 4. BOXINGNEWS. You can also check out his work on the Inscriber. Go to theinscriber.com. You can check out his blogs. There's also podcast stuff there as well. I go to UGL for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
You can read my regular column at Communities Digital News, which is COMM Digi News, comdiginews.com. And I am part of Team New York Fights, which is
That's right. I keep forgetting that. Yes, indeed.
nyfights.com. And that's the place where I get to swear.
You do it here as well from on occasion, so it is understandable. You get to write and swear. I'll put it that way. If you want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me, you know what it is. Brother JR at Brother JR76 on Twitter, as I said at the beginning of the show. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the site is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. If you want to email us, you can do so at p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. Check out the site. The top portion of the page, if you navigate that, you'll find links to where to follow us all over podcast realm, all over social media, where you can donate, and also my coaching page. I am an online coach. Let's Build Together Challenge. I'm expecting you there, Gail. Daniel, you too. I'm going to pick that up back in October. Just did a run during July and August. Going to start one again for October. If you're interested in getting your body right, if you're interested in checking out the 2-week free trial on Beachbody On Demand, or if you're interested in one of the fitness programs on Beachbody On Demand, please check out my coaching site on Pound for Pound Boxing Report. P4pboxingreport.com. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Serrano and Mercado. We will also do a preview of, depends on when we do the show next week. We will do either a preview or a recap of Kazuto Ioka, WBO 115-pound champion. He's making a mandatory defense against a fighter by the name of Rodriguez. Also, we will do a preview of the rematch between Josh Warrington and Mauricio Lara. For those who have forgotten, they fought earlier this year. Warrington vacated the IBF 126-pound belt. One of the upsets of the year. Lara just didn't just beat Josh Warrington. He beat him up. Stopped him in round 9, and the way it finished, it was ugly for Warrington. Warrington says he wants to do it one more again. They're going to September 4th in Leeds on DAZN. On the undercard of that, Katie Taylor is putting her undisputed world lightweight titles on the line against Jennifer Hahn. So we'll be talking about those fights for sure. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live show. You're a little bit late, Olaf. We're getting ready to shut things down. Want to thank Olaf for joining us at the very end. Lee, Chris, Sean. This has been episode 336 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Update on the ladies show, Ladies Love Boxing show. We usually do it, have recorded it by now. The goal, the plan, the hope, fingers crossed, is to do it in October, in around the time for Fury Wilder 3. We'll keep you updated on that. So yeah, episode 336 of Pound for Pound Boxing Report is in the books. For Gail, for Daniel, I'm your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.